Welcome to the Political Beatdown with Michael Cohen and Ben Meiselas. We have a lot to discuss today. We are still on Indictment Watch here at the MeidasTouch Network. The Manhattan grand jury will not be meeting today from the reporting we heard earlier in the day in connection with the Trump criminal investigation. So what is going on there? We'll discuss as much as we can. Special counsel Jack Smith is continuing to make major progress in the federal criminal investigation into Donald Trump's various crimes and secured a major court victory against Donald Trump and Trump's lawyer, Evan Corcoran, who will now be compelled to testify this week on Friday based on a finding of a crime fraud exception and a finding by the federal judge that Donald Trump was engaged in a criminal scheme and was using his lawyer, Evan Corcoran, in furtherance of that criminal scheme. And the Court of Appeals upheld that as well. If you thought it wasn't possible for Donald Trump's posts to get even more deranged, well, think again. Some of his new posts are just so vile and so disgusting. It is just tragically embarrassing that the Republican Party has become a cult that supports this madness. And speaking of the Republican cult that supports this madness, today, as we are live, they are holding a hearing where they are just supporting, no restrictions on weapons of war. They're attacking the ATF. And again, the MAGA Republicans hold these hearings and it backfires once again. We'll discuss this and more, but we got Michael Cohen for you all. Cohen, how are you doing?
I'm trying to hold up. I'd like to say that this is easy, but it's not. It's a sad reminder of, unfortunately, where our country is at right now, politically as well as socially. We're in a bad place, my brigaders. We really are. And I have to tell you, the amount of pressure that Donald Trump and his team intend on exerting against me is very similar. It's eerily similar to what they did during the very first part of my case, right after, the raid, and when I ultimately pled based upon the pressure that was being put on me by government. Then, of course, let's not forget the unconstitutional remand and the amount of pressure that government was putting on the Bureau of Prisons and the Department of Corrections, one, to grab me, and two, to keep me. And then now again, here we are. But the saddest thing is, while this pressure is enormous, and I don't wish this on anybody, this is absolutely nothing compared to the playbook that Donald is going to use and the amount of pressure and anger and hatred that they will look to exert on me as the case moves closer to a trial. And that's, of course, post-indictment.
And so when we think about the threats and when people say, what is Donald Trump going to do? I mean, he's doing it right now, right? And you see the coordination with all different groups. So on the one hand, it's coordinated with all the MAGA Republicans who now hold leadership positions in the House of Representatives, as disgusting as that is to say. You then have all of the right-wing fascist kind of propaganda influencers who are normalized within this digital ecosystem and large media networks who go out there and just spread these venomous and disgusting lies. And then you have the propaganda network known as Fox, which is out there each and every day, spreading disgusting lies. And literally, Cohen, I mean, you can't turn on that propaganda network where they're not doing a segment on you and attacking you every single moment. Not to mention, Trump then goes on his social media platform with his dangerous cult followers who are all out there just posting QAnon memes every day, and Trump's reposting the QAnon memes every day. And when they talk about the storm is coming and Trump reposts that, the storm is coming means that in their crazy world, he's going to take over the government by force, hold public executions, and kill everyone. And that's something that he posts every single day. And so, as you say, like, we're recording this amidst that, in this moment of history where all of that's being directed at you. And you have this platform, you have this podcast to cut through the BS and to tell the public how you feel and what you're going through. And so I want to give you the floor more broadly to have that conversation with everyone out there, not through the BS media filter, but just to let people know, like, how are you doing? What are you thinking? What's going through your mind right now that you're able to share? And really, what do you want people to know out there?
It's very, very sad. It's not just Fox News, Newsmax, OAN, the ones that you expect. The saddest part is that they have significant relations throughout all media networks, network as well as cable news. And when I say all, I'm talking about all. And you start to see, like, for example, I was watching Erin Burnett the other day, and she had, what's his name, Ty Cobb on the show. And Ty Cobb is in the Trump camp. Don't forget, he represented them. He was, in fact, involved with the statement that I gave to Congress. That is what landed me in the 1001 violation. And for my brigaders, I'll just remind you, that was all based upon the number of times that I spoke to Donald about the failed Trump Tower Moscow project. I stated 3. The true answer was 10. And that's what got me a 9th charge against me, which is an amazing thing, considering I'm not the one who stole top secret documents and hid them at Mar-a-Lago. I'm not the guy who turned around and had a lawyer go ahead and make an affidavit stating that all those documents have been returned after a very thorough check, not just with the client, but also with the location. I'm not the one like with Evan Corcoran on January 6th and all of the other Rudy Kaludis and now this guy Bob Costello. I'm not the guy who did that. But yet, for some unknown reason, they take these people and they don't finish the sentence. Well, he's a convicted liar. So again, my whole goal is to inform you, the public, what the lie even was. And if you're scratching your head and saying, what the fuck are you talking about? How could that be the lie that you were charged with? That is the lie that I was charged with. The number of times I spoke to Donald Trump about the failed real estate project in Moscow, which of course I did at the direction of, right? I certainly didn't come up with the idea, right? In coordination with and for the benefit of Donald J. Trump. I mean, what benefit did I have to saying 3 versus 10? Who gives a shit? Well, it wasn't me who gave a shit. It was Donald. And you had guys like Abby Lowell and Ty Cobb and Ivanka and Jared and Jay Sekulow and myself. And we were all crafting these comments because we were instructed to stay on message. This is the message that was being put forth, and it was the message that Donald J. Trump wanted put forth. And I hope you can all see what happens if, in fact, you don't stay in the camp, if, in fact, you do challenge his authority, if, in fact, you do try to hold him accountable for his dirty deeds, if, in fact, you try, right, to have him accept, the responsibility for his deeds and his actions. What they do, they come at you like spider monkeys to try to pull your face off. And that's exactly what they're trying to do to me. And they do it every single day. They start putting out documents, but they don't put out the document. What they do is they only touch upon a specific sentence in that document, and out of context, it doesn't give the full picture. Here's the interesting thing. Right after Bob Costello appeared and gave his speech and it appeared before the grand jury, he tried to put in like 320 documents and so on. It didn't work with the grand jury. There was only maybe about a dozen or so documents that were reviewed and looked at, and it did not change the position of any of the jurors, which is why I was there at the building on standby as a rebuttal witness if in fact it was necessary. It was determined by the prosecutors, and this is all reported. I don't know if you saw this on the front page today of the New York Times. There's an incredible article about me, and it's true, it's accurate, and it's very, very balanced and fair. But one of the things, is that the district attorney's office, the lead prosecutor, and the entire, really exemplary prosecutorial team, they didn't buy any of the bullshit. They weren't interested in having me come in as the rebuttal witness, and then they sent me home. The interesting thing that goes on now is that Costello and Trump and the acolytes and the right-wingers, the maggots, decide that they're now going to go ahead and they're going to try to take this as a win. That as a direct result of Costello's stellar performance, which is, I think, how Donald validated it, all of a sudden that this has now thrown the DA's case into a series of conundrums. And as a direct result, that's why that they didn't have any grand jury meetings yesterday or today and so on. I don't know the reason why that they didn't. I understand that there's an additional witness that may be presented from the Trump side, again, to muck the water up. No different than his statement and allegation, which threw the entire media ecosystem into flux, which is that he is going to be indicted on Tuesday. That was merely done in order to garner more attention for himself, right? To fundraise off it. Since a week ago, he's raised over $2 million off of this line of bullshit. But more than that, again, going back to Costello, they're claiming that as a direct result of Costello's truthful and stellar comments, that he's now thrown the entire DA's case into a conundrum, even to the point that there may not be an indictment. I mean, these are things that are coming out of the Donald J. Trump universe of misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation. And I'm not saying that an indictment is forthcoming. I don't know the answer. All I know is I was asked to provide information. And I did. And I started, as you may recall, while I was still at Otisville. 3 times the DA's office that was under Cyrus Vance, our former DA, came to visit. When I was released, I then spoke with the DA Cyrus Vance's team at that time 10 more times, making it a total at that time of 13. In comes Alvin Bragg, our new district attorney. The case gets all fucked up, whatever the reason. If you've read Mark Pomerantz's book, you'll probably understand a little more. But right after that, I get a phone call from Lanny Davis, my lawyer, saying that the DA would like you to come in and they'd like to talk to you 7 additional times, bringing it up to 20 plus the 2 times that I was there before the grand jury, for a total of a little over 5 hours of conversation with them. And then the 23rd appearance at 80 Center Street, that was as the rebuttal witness. So after 23 times, I still can't tell you whether or not emphatically there will or there will not be an indictment. But based upon all of the facts as I know them, and based on the facts that if you read Revenge, my latest book, How Donald Trump Weaponized the United States Department of Justice Against His Critics, if you're understanding, you've been following the entire hush money scenario, you'll understand that if I was found guilty, if I was convicted of that crime, and I specifically stated over 5 years ago, which I did at the direction of in coordination with and for the benefit of Donald J. Trump. If that crime is good enough to charge me, it should be good enough to charge him. Because as I said last time, and sometimes I go on these rants, at the end of the day, there is only one justice system in this country. And there can be only one justice system in this country. Otherwise, it is not a democracy. It is an autocracy. We are all the same. Joe and Jane Doe citizen should be treated no differently than Joe or Jane member of Congress or a former president. So let's just all sit back, take a breath, allow Alvin Bragg and his incredible team to do the job that they are expected to do one way or the other. I could only do what I was asked to do. That's to provide documents, provide information, and be available as a potential witness, despite the fact that, in all fairness, it shreds your soul and it just destroys your happiness because of the level of hate that's coming from the MAGAs and the right-wing ecosystem. So let's just all take a breath, let Alvin Bragg and his team do what they feel is right. If there's an indictment forthcoming, so be it. And if they make a determination based upon grand jury, decision not to indict, so be it. We all have to respect that. And one last thing, Ben, which I want to bring up. This is not the one and only. As you know, there are 4 matters that are now pending. There's actually way more than 4, but 4 that are government related. You have, of course, Georgia, January 6th. You have this hush money payment, and you also have the Mar-a-Lago document case. Just because, hypothetically, the Alvin Bragg matter goes forward doesn't mean that the other 3 just die by its wayside, that this is the case that will ultimately hold Donald Trump for the first time in his life accountable. It is not. Whoever goes first, goes first. But that doesn't preclude any of the other either DAs or attorney generals or special counsel from doing what they are entrusted to do. So one has nothing to do with the other. And I just want people to remember that.
Michael, I don't know how much you're able to share here, but as you mentioned, you were on standby to be a rebuttal witness at the end of last week. They didn't need you to be a rebuttal witness, which people can infer from that if they needed you as a rebuttal witness, that usually would mean that they would need to have certain things cleaned up or cleared, but you were sent home. Are you able to share whether or not you've been given any notification whether you will be called back as a rebuttal witness, or if you anticipate, as far as you know, as of right now, testifying again before that grand jury?
Yeah, so as of right now, and I've been vocal about this, I have not been asked to come back in at this specific point in time. When I had left after the second grand jury, I believed at the time that I was the last and final witness, and that the grand jury was allegedly going to be taking a vote. Turns out that Trump did something which is very unusual but clever. He refused himself the invitation by the DA to appear and to give grand jury testimony, which, by the way, is very smart that they stopped him because, as we all know, Trump fucking lies like a rug. I mean, he lies the way you and I, Ben, breathe.
Yep.
There's nothing that comes out of this guy's mouth that is honest or truthful. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, based upon the Trump lie-o-meter, there's over 40,000 lies he told during his time in office. But then again, I am, of course, the convicted liar. Putting all of that aside, that's what I believe, that was the last. But he went ahead and instead they brought in Costello, and despite the fact that I was not needed, and that to me means, and it should mean to anyone, that nothing that he said was damaging to the prosecutor's case, to the DA case. And so it wasn't even necessary. And that's a good thing. Now it's just time to see what happens next, because I understand that another witness is coming in on Monday. But at this point in time, I have not been asked, to return, though I still remain available if in fact it's needed. But at this present moment, my understanding is that it is not. And I'm thankful for that.
Yeah. And you mentioned before, as you were talking, you said, sometimes I go on these rants. And look, there are some times where there are the Cohen rants, which we all love. But the reality is the importance of this format now more than ever is to be able to, as much as possible, given limitations that inure to grand jury proceedings, to be as transparent as possible, right? To speak to people
Right.
directly. And the problem that we see right now, too, and it happens over and over again, and this is why, our idea of creating this show and the MeidasTouch network and Mea Culpa in general is so important, is that the media, for a variety of reasons, is not only woefully inadequate to rise to the moment. Sometimes you watch it and you go, are they intentionally trying to sabotage the moment? Because how could they be so utterly awful in their job at just having a conversation where you can allow information to get out? And when there's false information, to check it and rebut it and do it the right way. And there are some good people who rebut it the right way. Ari Melber's done an incredible job when the BS machine is turned on to really check it, and he's well researched. But you've got large media networks that do the whole both sidesisms, or they'll let people, to your point, just say false things about you, about the situation, and then they normalize MAGA world. And then you have just your right-wing fascist channels, and that's what
Right.
exists. Your other alternative is the MeidasTouch Network, Political Beatdown, Mea Culpa.
And what's amazing is the fact that they're trying to rewrite history. They're trying to rewrite what we all know. They're trying to change legitimate conversation. And one of the things that they're doing now, I don't know if you saw this, but I thought this was rather interesting, is that they're now trying to put out the message of strength, the strength of Donald J. Trump, that he's actually looking forward to being indicted. He's looking forward to being perp walked so that he could make commercials of it, and that he can fundraise off of it, and that he could show the world how strong he is, that no one is going to mess with him. He's willing to accept this, and he's going to fight this, and he's going to destroy the liberals. He's going to destroy everyone who he wants to claim is woke. He's going to take on the entire institution of government and show that this is nothing more than a witch hunt. I can tell you for certain that Donald Trump is not. And I understand he's got some coaches that are trying to tell him what to do. Should he smile at the camera as he's walking by? Should he turn around and wave to the people? Should he stop and say something, or flex his muscles if there was one? I mean, that's what they're trying to tell him that he needs to do at this very moment, when in fact, that's not what he's feeling inside that gut of his. Right now, that gut must be twisted and wrenched. He does not, this is his biggest fear, is that he would one day be held accountable for his own dirty deeds, that accountability would get him processed in the Justice Department, that he would end up getting fingerprinted and mugshotted. That's a massive, massive fear that he has, because he knows the truth, and he could fucking lie and bullshit to the country and to his own people all that he wants. He himself knows the truth of what Stormy Daniels was all about. He knows the truth what Karen McDougal, the Playboy Playmate, was all about. He knows the truth about the Access Hollywood, grab him by the pussy comment was all about. He knows exactly all of the other matters, like the E. Jean Carroll case and others. He knows what that's all about. And his biggest fear is that he will one day be held accountable, and that will ultimately result in a conviction against him.
And the walls are closing from all directions on all of those matters. And, maybe all these people are giving him various pieces of advice, but he's just sitting there at Mar-a-Lago, posting away on his social media platform, attacking all of the prosecutors and attacking you.
Attacking
MeidasTouch,
anyone and
you,
everyone.
everybody.
Yeah.
So this is a post that he just put up. He goes, District Attorney Bragg is a danger to our country and should be removed immediately. along with radical lunatic bomb thrower Jack Smith, who is harassing and intimidating innocent people at levels not seen before. Quote, get Trump, Letitia James, the worst attorney general in the United States, and Atlanta DA Fani Willis, who is trying to make perfect, he puts that in caps, phone calls into a plot to destroy America, but reigns over the most violent crime scene in America and does nothing about it. In addition to all of this just being completely and entirely false. Republican areas have the most crime, frankly, in the entire country. It's red states. Just again, attacking the prosecutors. He calls Alvin Bragg earlier today an animal in this recent post, and he also references, you. He goes, why won't Bragg drop this case? This is all in caps. So as the media tries to normalize this individual, and as the Republican Party looks up to this individual as their cult leader, this is what he's writing. This is what he's doing. And by the way, I'm not going to show all of these posts because he's done like 30 of them already today, and I'm not going to waste our time. But he goes, why won't Bragg drop this case? Everybody says there's no crime here. Nobody says that. I did nothing wrong. It was all made. Everybody says it. I did nothing wrong. It was all made up by a convicted nut job with zero credibility who has been disputed by a highly respected professionals at every turn. Bragg refuses to stop despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary. He is a Soros-backed animal who just doesn't care about right or wrong, no matter how many people are hurt. This is no legal system. This is the Gestapo. This is Russia and China, but worse, disgraceful. I mean, this statement right here may as well have been written from Adolf Hitler. That's like a Nazi statement. I mean, calling Bragg a George Soros animal. I mean, it is some disgusting stuff.
Look, there's not a single thing that I could say that Donald didn't say himself about himself in that specific truth, or whatever they call those things that they put out.
Pravdas.
It is what's that?
I call it the Pravdas.
Yeah,
the Russian Communist Party. That's what they called their main propaganda paper, and it's not. Yeah. It's not too dissimilar.
This is really scary stuff, because he's doing exactly what the Nazis did at the beginning in 1935, when they start, comparing Jews to rats. Here, Alvin Bragg is an animal. This one is an animal. This one is disgraceful. This one is a nut job. Seriously? Let me be very clear about something. All right. First and foremost, the first time I ever met Stormy Daniels was when I was on my podcast, when I invited her to come on my podcast. And by the way, it wasn't in person. It was by Zoom. All right. The first time I actually physically met her was at the Avenatti trial, when she was coming in to testify as a witness. I said I would come, I would be there, I would say hello, and we actually had a nice, fun laugh. And we spent a few minutes together just talking about just how crazy everything has become. But I'm not the one who had the affair or who had the sexual encounter with Donald. That was Donald who had it. All right. I didn't have the affair with Karen McDougal. I mean, that was Donald. I was asked, as I've stated, literally since day number one, to take care of it. And so I did, with his, at his direction and in coordination with him and Weisselberg. And I made the payment on his behalf. That I did. And that I acknowledge, and I accept my responsibility. Why he wants to now turn around and claim that I did this, I paid for it out of my pocket, that he didn't know anything about it. Does he not realize how much documentation and how much evidence exists out there that dispels that notion? And he doesn't care, because he has his own set of alternative facts. He lives in his own universe. And all of these fucking moronic sycophants that are hanging around him, they know what happens when Donald Trump's ire turns on you. All you have to do is look at the way that I am getting attacked, that I'm getting beaten up. And none of them want that. So what do? Sure, Donald, whatever you say, if you say Michael Cohen is a lying nut job, yeah, we will go on television like Takapinas did, or even Alan Dershowitz did the other day. He's sitting there. You got Alan fucking Dershowitz, for God's sakes, sitting there and saying, these erroneous misinformation statements that are put out by the Trump camp to all of their, media sources and to all of their acolytes to keep promoting the same line of shit, because Donald believes in what Stalin used to say: the more you repeat a lie, the more it becomes the truth. And that's what Donald Trump wants. It's a Stalin thing. It's something that Putin has learned very, very well. Lie, keep lying, keep spreading that lie until the lie becomes the truth. That's what he's looking to do. And I hate to say it, one thing about this motherfucker is for sure: he really understands this game. That is Donald Trump's superpower. He has the ability to lie to your fucking face with the verbiage of a 5-year-old, of a 9-year-old, and get people to buy into it. Why they do, why I did, I don't know the answer to it, but it is definitively his superpower. And it's the same type of superpower that Adolf Hitler had. It's the same superpower Mussolini and Khrushchev and, all of these dictators, these autocrats. It's the same type of a power. I mean, it's the same power that cult leaders have, the David Koresh's of the world, the Jim Jones. I mean, how many people can walk around and tell people, I'm going to have you drink this, you're going to die in about 15 minutes of poisoning, but knock yourself out for the next 15 minutes. But I'm telling you to do it, so do it. And how many of those people went ahead and did it? It's a superpower.
And now it is a political party. The Republican political party is led by this deranged nonsense. And it isn't both sides. It's not that, the Republicans are into, they're just focused on states' rights. They want small government. They have a certain view about taxation. Look, I'm happy to have that debate any single day, but they're not for any of those things. They want America to default on our full faith and credit, right? That's one of the things that they are perfectly willing and able to do. They weaponize the House of Representatives to attack Alvin Bragg on behalf of Donald Trump. Well, Donald Trump says things like this. As you were just talking, Cohen, a new post by Donald Trump was made, because again, he's posting this over and over and over again. This is all he's doing right now. He goes, "Isn't it terrible that DA Bragg refuses to do the right thing and, quote, call it a day? He would rather indict an innocent man and create years of hatred, chaos, and turmoil than give him his well-deserved, quote, freedom. The whole country sees what is going on, and they're not going to take it anymore. They've had enough. There was no error made, no misdemeanor, no crime, and above all, no case. They spied on my campaign, rigged the election, falsely impeached, cheated, and lied. They are human scum." And so when you analyze what he's doing there, and he's saying they've had enough, they're not going to take it anymore,
right,
and then otherizing and saying they're human scum, that coded language, Cohen, better than anyone. He's telling his followers, go out there for me and kill these people.
Well,
that's not hyperbole. That's what he's saying.
Yeah, I mean, what he's really doing is he's taking all of his issues, which is his improper actions, his company's improper actions, and he's putting it into the position that it's all of yours, that it's not just me, that they're going after our freedom. They're going after our humanity, our decency, is what he'd really like to say is white privilege, right? That they're going after us. They're destroying our country, and that we cannot accept this. And we as a group need to do something about it. And then, of course, he specifically right now is isolating Alvin Bragg as the target, and in hopes that he will create fear in Alvin Bragg, not just political fear, but also safety. That's what he's doing. He wants Alvin Bragg to think twice about bringing this case forward, because these people, my supporters, my MAGAs, right, will not accept what you are doing to us. And so if in fact you choose this route, be warned, because you, my friend, are human scum. That's
You
what he's
meant
doing.
You mentioned the E. Jean Carroll case, which is set to go to trial, both the civil rape case itself and the second defamation case are combined into one. It's the defamation that Donald Trump engaged in October of 2022, which is alleged in her complaint. That's set to go to trial at the end of April. And you can see that Donald Trump's threats, though, have a real ramifications on these court proceedings, because here you have Judge Kaplan, the federal judge, saying that we need to have an anonymous jury here. And the reason for an anonymous jury where the names and identities of the jurors will remain secret, that's usually reserved.
Yeah, but
in the
Ben,
most
I do want to correct you on this. The E. Jean Carroll case for again, it's really not 100% clear, but they put that case on hold. Maybe there's a motion that's pending right now, but they put that case on hold. That doesn't mean that case is going away. It is not.
Unless there was an update, here's what they did as of at least pre-recording. So there's three cases. There's E. Jean Carroll 1, which is the defamation that took place in 2019 when he's in office. There still hasn't been a ruling there from the Court of Appeals. Separately, there is the civil rape case based on the New York Adult Survivors Statute, which allows survivors of sexual assault whose statute of limitations elapsed to look back 1 year and bring a case within a 1 year period, even if their statute of limitations elapsed. And then there is the second defamation case. The media has been reporting it wrong, Cohen. And so my belief is that the April 10th case, which is defamation 1, that case has been adjourned. However, defamation 2, as well as the civil rape case itself, have been combined into one action. That case, though, is actually still set, as far as I know, before the recording, to go to trial on April 25th. And the court just issued an order in connection with that case about the anonymous jury that's going to be used in that case starting April 25th. And the court cited the January 6th Commission report as well, which basically, which is cited by this federal judge in New York, to saying how the insurrectionists have all said that their actions were attributable to Donald Trump. This federal judge also points out in the order what Trump's been doing right now with this grand jury in Manhattan. And on page 3, it says, this is from a federal judge ruling that was just handed down: Mr. Trump's quite recent reaction to what he perceived as an imminent threat of indictment by a grand jury sitting virtually next door to the court was to encourage, protest, and to urge people to take our country back. The reaction reportedly has been perceived by some as incitement to violence, and it bears mention that Mr. Trump repeatedly has attacked courts, judges, law enforcement officials, and other public officials, and even individual jurors in other matters. And so you see courts all calling Trump out for his conduct there. And I want to get your take on this as well, because this is what I think Judge Beryl Howell did, the federal judge overseeing the grand juries in Washington, D.C., in Jack Smith's criminal investigation, because things are moving lightning speed.
Well, no,
there.
let's not fall into, Ben, with all due respect, let's not fall into the lightning speed sort of lines that you hear from, we'll call it, news channels and cable news channels, network channels, and so on. It's not moving lightning speed. Nothing in DC moves lightning speed. And once Jack Smith finishes, then of course he takes that to molasses Merrick Garland, which will possibly sit in that strainer and sift until it finally comes out. That's the problem. The only case that moved quickly was mine in 48 hours. Everything else is years. And especially the one thing with Donald is he knows how to fuck up the system. He knows how to make motion after motion to muck the water up so that everything gets slowed down. That's the whole problem. And that's why, again, as I said previously, it's not an issue, Ben, of whether or not the Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg's case goes first, or Jack Smith goes first, or Fonnie Willis goes first. I personally don't give a shit, and I don't believe our brigaders care either.
Yep.
Just let the guy be held accountable for what he has been alleged to have done. I don't want to see Donald Trump. I say it all the time, and I've been saying it for, I don't know, well over a year and a half now. I don't want to see Donald Trump indicted, prosecuted, convicted, or incarcerated because we fundamentally disagree on a whole bunch of shit. I want to see him held accountable to the same extent that everybody else would be held accountable. I mean, I was held accountable for example, paying Karen McDougal. How many articles are fucking wrong? They turn around, they say that I paid Karen McDougal $150,000. I did not. I paid Karen McDougal nothing. That was paid by the National Enquirer. I was going to buy the life rights to it on behalf of Donald, which was done at his direction, in his coordination with, and at the, for the benefit of Donald. The fuck do I want to own the life rights of his lousy sex with Karen McDougal? I mean, what the fuck? Come on, people. Wake the fuck up. And it's like, I was scratching my head when these topics keep coming up and people like, you committed campaign finance violation. I'm looking, I'm like, I did? Right? Come on. What are we talking about? This was all done with Donald. I'm doing this alone. That the thought that I'm going to go take $130,000, and no, I did not mortgage my home to do it. I've had HELOCs on the property since the day that I own them, and then on other properties since the year like 2000. So the whole thing is just a bunch of bullshit. The way that the press makes mistakes, and once they make the mistake, and especially when you have someone like Donald and his acolytes sitting there and they keep reinforcing the mistake, and then the mistake becomes the dogma. It's unbelievable, and it's impossible. I am trying to, there was a guy by the name of Ray Donovan, and I'm not talking about the TV show either, though I'm a massive fan of it.
Yeah, it's a good show.
I don't know if I told this to you, but I was actually supposed to be in an episode at the time. This is a true story. At the time that all of this shit was going down, and I was after the raid, and so they wanted me on one of the episodes, and I was going to do it because I never thought anything like this was going to happen, where I was going to be charged with anything. Right? And my lawyer at that point in time turned and said, "You cannot do it. It's no good." Right? I mean, but Ray Donovan, who I'm referring to, I believe was the Secretary of Labor for under Ronald Reagan. And one of the things that he said, because they went after him terribly and they destroyed him reputationally, what does a person need to do in order to get their reputation back? Now, I can tell you, because that's what I've been on. I've been on a reputational journey. I've been on this redemption journey, not just to advise the world of the truth, but also the truth that was my truth, which is to completely negate the 50 plus lies that were told about me, starting with the Steele dossier all the way to the alleged attack and Stormy Daniels in a garage, which Avenatti wanted to claim was me, which I didn't even know Stormy. I'd never even heard her name at that point in time. I wasn't working for Donald. And the whole thing, there's so many lies that were told about me. And my goal is to use this platform, to use, news outlets, to use even this case when I ultimately, if in fact he's indicted and I am on the witness stand and they want to start to attack me about my taxes. I have never, and I've said this in my book, Revenge, and I pray that each and every one of you read it so that you understand my anger. You understand my insistence on pushing this matter further, because yes, it will rehabilitate the lies, the fake stories that were told about me, and rehabilitate my reputation, which my whole life had always been, for the most part, has always been incredibly well received. Yeah, I did things that were wrong. I acknowledge it, including the campaign finance violation, working with the National Enquirer and doing certain things. But at the same point in time, these tax evasion charges and the HELOC violation. They're just lies that were created, and they were created so that Donald Trump could turn around and say that it has nothing to do with me. It only has to do with Michael's businesses, which has nothing to do with me. Then, of course, as we all know, he tried to use Jeffrey Berman in the Southern District of New York to rewrite the charges of campaign finance violation, have those removed. So the only ones that would have remained would have been the ones against me. Very clever move, but it just didn't work. And it didn't work not because Jeffrey Berman wasn't in the tank, or Kazami, or Nick Roos, or Andrea Griswold, or Tom McKay, or any of those animals. Had nothing to do with that. It was simply because I had already pled to those charges as well, and there was no way for them to do it and not to have the impression that something was going on here that they were all involved with. They are fighting each and every day to keep all the FOIA documents away from us so that we don't get a chance to see just how deep the corruption went, just how Donald Trump and Bill Barr, that bloviated motherfucker, all right, how they turned around and that they weaponized the Justice Department to go against a critic, not just to go against me personally, but also to show others. You want to fuck with Donald? This is what you want? The same thing that happened to Cohen will happen to you. It's like the mob when they warn somebody by executing somebody else. That's what this is all about.
51 days you spent in solitary confinement in addition to Otisville. 51 days in solitary confinement. They clearly wanted to send that message. And the message, though, that we want to send here on the MeidasTouch Network is the truth, and to give this platform to you, collectively, for us to share the truth, unfettered, no media BS. And I just want to remind everyone to hit subscribe, because MeidasTouch Network is headed to 1 million subscribers. So while you're watching this, hit subscribe. Right now, Cohen, this is like one of the number one, as we're live right now, one of the number one most watched shows in the entire world right now, that's live streaming on YouTube. 2 points I want to make as well. I went back to the court's order on the E. Jean Carroll matter. The trial in the E. Jean Carroll of the second defamation and the civil rape case that will be taking place April 25th, 2023, with the anonymous jury. And then in a footnote in the court's order, it says the other case, which is the first defamation, which is still, some of those issues are on appeal under something called the Westfall Act immunity. Remember, Bill Barr substituted in the Department of Justice in the U.S. in that case. It went on to be appealed to the Second Circuit Court of Appeals after the district court judge ruled against Donald Trump's assertion of immunity, that this was within the course and scope of his duties as a president. And then the Second Circuit found, yes, Donald Trump was a government employee, but on the issue of course and scope of employment, it's a two-part test to grant immunity. They punted that question to the top territorial court in Washington, D.C., which is called the D.C. Court of Appeal. We don't have a ruling there. That's why the April 10th case was adjourned, but the other two cases combined as one case, that will be taking place April 25th. The one thing that I meant to say on lightning speed, though, just for the sake of rehabbing myself there, is not the Jack Smith proceedings are taking place at lightning speed, but specifically this motion hearing to compel Evan Corcoran's testimony under the crime fraud exception. Evan Corcoran, one of Donald Trump's lawyers, asserts that he has attorney-client privilege regarding all of his communications with Trump, and we believe that there are notes and audio recordings between Corcoran and Trump as well, that Corcoran would not turn over, saying, look, these are attorney-client privilege. Jack Smith challenged that. There was a hearing at the end of last week, where Judge Beryl Howell found that Donald Trump was engaged in a criminal scheme, whether or not Corcoran was involved wittingly or unwittingly. He was a part, he was being used as the scheme, and then Corcoran's being compelled now to testify this week on Friday to turn over those documents, to turn over those records and audio files. Here's what was lightning speed, though, was that Trump appealed to the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeal. It went in front of a 3-judge panel. The briefing schedule they set Normally that's months. They set a 12-hour briefing schedule for both Trump and the Department of Justice. And then within just a few hours after, rejected Trump's appeal and then turned over those records to the Department of Justice. And now the DOJ and Jack Smith will be, one, they have access to these records, but two, Evan Corcoran will now be testifying this Friday. And remember, Corcoran was the one who was working with Christina Bobb, who signed that attestation stating on June 3rd of 2022 that all of the Mar-a-Lago documents were turned over, and that there were no other documents. They put in a Redweld folder 38 top secret documents, and they said, this is in response to your subpoena. We know that was obviously a lie, because when the search warrant was executed on August 8th, they found thousands of other records and at least 100 more classified records. But Cohen, you and I have been following here on our show, and just we've been talking about it a lot, like Jamie Raskin just completely kicking ass. And so yet again, there's another hearing that has been held at the request of these MAGA Republicans. This was called a hearing on oversight and accountability, and it was titled ATF's Assault on the Second Amendment. When is enough enough? Saying that the deep state within alcohol, tobacco, firearms is attacking the Second Amendment. And I want to show you what Jamie Raskin said, because this is going on right now as you and I have been doing this live. And this is Raskin talking about what the MAGA Republicans, what their view of the Second Amendment is. Take a look at this. Let's play this clip.
Die of gun violence in America than in any other industrialized country on earth, whether we're talking about Canada or Germany or France, United Kingdom, Japan, Israel, you name it. They know that the states with the highest rates of firearm deaths are the ones with the weakest gun laws, and the states with the lowest levels of firearm deaths have the strongest gun laws. But they say that all of this chaos and destruction is just the necessary price we have to pay because of the Second Amendment. All those thousands of people gunned down at church, in school, at the Walmart, in parks and grocery stores are just the human sacrifice we've decided to pay as a society for our Second Amendment. My colleagues, this is a lie. Our colleagues advance a completely flawed theory of the Second Amendment, which leads them to oppose even reasonable common sense gun safety rules that the Supreme Court has approved and which the vast majority of Americans endorse. Our colleagues embrace what's called the insurrectionist theory of the Second Amendment. Our colleague, Mr. Gates, says the Second Amendment is, quote, about maintaining within the citizenry the ability to maintain an armed rebellion against the government if that becomes necessary. Our colleague Chip Roy says the Second Amendment was designed purposefully to empower the people to resist the force of tyranny used against them. And Congresswoman Boebert says the Second Amendment, quote, has nothing to do with hunting unless you're talking about hunting tyrants, maybe. Well, this theory is completely debunked and destroyed by the text of the Constitution itself and by Supreme Court precedent. And yet their theory of the Second Amendment is killing Americans. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 15 of the Constitution gives Congress the power to provide for calling forth the militia to execute the laws of the Union and suppress insurrections and invasions. The Republican Guarantee Clause tells the U.S. Congress to guarantee a Republican form of government to the states and to protect them against domestic violence. There's 6 other provisions in the Constitution, including the Treason Clause, that debunk what they're saying. And we're going to have to get through their false notion of the Second Amendment in order to save human life. Thank you. I yield back.
I mean, he's just so good, Cohen.
I mean, good isn't the word for it. I mean, look, I know Jamie Raskin now, and I can tell you this treatment that he's undergoing, the cancer treatment, is obviously, taking a toll upon his body, as it would anybody. But nevertheless, this man gets up every single day, puts on his pants, puts on his shirt, tie, jacket, goes to work, fighting for our freedom. So if we just all take a moment and just say a prayer for him during the course of a day, that would probably go a long way. He's a good man fighting a good battle, and obviously for a good cause, which is American democracy. But one of the things, Ben, that I constantly talk about on this show and with our brigaders, the reason why I keep saying Tell your friends about Political Beatdown. Tell your friends about MeidasTouch Network. Tell your friends about Mea Culpa. Understand the facts and why. Because while Democrats are passionate about this, we're not organized the way we need to be, not like the way the MAGAs are. As soon as Donald Trump doesn't even have to put out the right words, he puts out those untruths on his social media platform and they explode. And then all of his maggots start reacting to it, whether it's financially, whether it's making phone calls, whether it's sending really disgusting and disgraceful emails or, other forms of harassment. They do his bidding. They are, I hate to say it, the maggots are fucking organized. And one of the things I constantly say, and look, I'm on this show, you get raw, unfiltered, and just no nonsense, no bullshit on what's going on. I am incredibly discouraged by our DNC, and I don't understand what they are doing and why they are not out there more actively fighting this cause. You see something going on that's wrong, they have an obligation to get the correct information out there, because if they don't, it's Jamie Harrison, who I believe is the head of the DNC. I don't understand why there's not more out there. We, meaning this Political Beatdown or any of the other shows on Meidas or my Mea Culpa, I keep asking for everybody to get together because they're not doing it. And if we don't do it, rest assured, this experiment that's known as democracy will fall apart. When you start seeing Putin and Xi Jinping together, now all of a sudden the economic factors that we were trying to put into place that would bring Russia to the table, those are all gone because now China has agreed to take all the oil from Russia. And they will now have more money in order to invest into this Ukrainian war, where they today, while Putin and Xi Jinping were together, Putin's army bombed a school in Kiev that killed a whole bunch of students. I mean, nothing says peace like a fucking bomb into a school, right? This is absolutely despicable. The whole thing. If we do not fight for our rights, if we do not fight for democracy, if we do not ensure that we do everything in our power to make our voices heard. And when I say fight, I'm not talking fight like the way Donald says it. I'm talking the peaceful protest, but make sure that these members of Congress, these elected officials, know that we're not here simply as puppets, that our voices need to be heard, and they need to do certain things to ensure that the Lauren Boeberts, the Marjorie Taylor Greens, the Hawleys, the whole Ted Cruzes, that there is no place for these people in the people's house. And we need to get this country back on track before we're lost.
So after you watch this episode or listen to this episode of Political Beatdown, what I really want you to do is I want you just to take a few minutes to yourself. I really do. And I know you're super busy out there. Take a few minutes. Maybe even go and look in the mirror. Because when you look in the mirror and on self-reflection, I want you to realize something that I think was an important epiphany that me and my younger brothers had a few years ago after we were on the sideline and we were not doing our part to help and promote our democracy. I admit that before 2020, before the global pandemic, I think I had failed in my civic duties. I really do. But we had no real special background in politics, or we just knew that if we were going to wait for a hero to emerge, whether that hero is a Jack Smith or an Alvin Bragg or a Letitia James or a Fani Willis or members of Congress or Biden, whoever it is, they will do their part, but ultimately, what you have to do, you have to realize is that you have the power, that you are the solution, and that you're not alone, right? Cohen and I are here with you. That's one of the important things for us to do the show. We are here with you. We are shoulder to shoulder with you. This isn't some top-down, sterile network. This is a movement. This is a brigade. This is a team. And we're here for you. We hear you loud and clear. And our motivation to continue to do this each and every week and to do it with passion is inspired by you. And so you can help by sharing these messages. You'll be surprised how many people that you speak to don't even know what's going on in New York. They don't know about what's going on in these hearings. They don't know. They turn on the news occasionally and they watch the both sides media act like this is just normal Democrats and Republicans. They don't know.
Well, that's
that you
the whole
have
problem. Donald Trump, right? Didn't Donald Trump normalize this sort of behavior?
Yeah,
He's absolutely normalized it for, unfortunately, the American population.
And so here's the solution. You're the solution. The brigade's the solution. The movement is the solution. And I am confident that together, with the exponential effect that we all have, can spread these messages of positivity, of compassion, of humanity, of truth, of pro-democracy. That will make the biggest difference here. So make sure you subscribe right now to the MeidasTouch Network. Make sure you subscribe to the audio podcast of Political Beatdown, wherever you are watching this or listening to this. If you just listen on the audio, subscribe to YouTube. If you're just a YouTube watcher, subscribe to Political Beatdown on audio and leave a 5-star review. That helps a lot there. Make sure you get Revenge by Michael Cohen. If you haven't gotten it, it is a great book. Wherever you get books and audio, go and search for Revenge and make sure you get your copy. How Donald Trump Weaponized the U.S. Department of Justice Against His Critics. It's an incredible book by a New York Times bestselling author, Michael Cohen. You could also check us out at store.MeidasTouch.com for the best MeidasTouch pro-democracy gear, including the official Mea Culpa podcast, Mar-a-Lardo Correctional Facility shirt, and so much more there as well. You can also go to patreon.com/MeidasTouch and join one of those memberships, since we're not funded by any outside investors. If you want to help grow it, no pressure there either way. And make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel. Help us get to 1 million in March. It's free. Cohen, I'll give you the last word.
Just a big thank you to Salty over there for helping to produce this, and thank you to our brigaders. Stay tuned. We're coming back to you on Tuesday. There'll be a lot more shit to talk about. That's a promise.
That's an understatement for the brigade. Shout out to the Meidas Mighty.